Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Thursday morning, June the 2nd. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And chat room is open. I did pop the link there. What we're sort of talking about this last month and a half. Really, it's been about 5-6 weeks we've been working on Robert Berney's web pages. And this is Joy to You and Me website, www.joy, J-O-Y, the number 2, MEU.com /codependence2.htm. We're looking at codependency, and he's got lots of stuff on there about inner child work and relationship stuff and all kinds of good stuff. I hope everybody will check it out. He's written some really good stuff. And Robert Berney, he's a codependence therapist. He's also a spiritual teacher. He's an author and written a book called Codependence: The Dance of Wounded Souls. So it's good stuff, and I hope everybody's getting something out of it. I know I do every time I check this stuff out, especially to do with codependency. It's good for me to see this stuff so that I don't repeat these patterns that my parents provided for me as a child. So hopefully everybody's getting something out of it. You know, I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows. And I just want to be one more voice speaking out against abuse and standing up, you know, for child rights and have, you know, another voice for survivors out here. I know there's so many survivors of child abuse. It's absolutely horrible. And none of us deserve this, and we all deserve to be treated decently, you know, and loved and respected and treated with dignity as children. And sadly enough, so many of us aren't and weren't. And there's so many children today who are suffering at the hands of someone who's abusing them because they want to, their own choice they're making on behalf of that child, which is the wrong choice. It's very sad, but there's so many survivors. I don't want to be another voice. So you have to listen at your own discretion. And all of my shows, I'm talking about abuse. So, you know, it's a sensitive subject, and you should, you know, be aware that you have to be ultimately responsible for what you listen to. And I'm talking about it because I don't sugarcoat it. I just tell it like it is. And this is my healing journey, and I'm talking a whole lot about my past, and it's pretty graphic and disturbing. And so, you know, you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows. And if you're under the age of 18, I ask that you have a parent or caregiver, somebody. Hopefully you have somebody in your life that will listen to the show with you, that, you know, they can help you make a decision that you know whether you should be listening or not, depending on how old you are. Because they age appropriately, right? There's a lot of adult, mature content on my shows, and I just think that children should be protected at all times. So you need to learn how to do that. You know, keep yourself safe online. There's lots of great websites out there that will show, you know, children and families and parents how to keep themselves safe online, right? So just start typing into your browser internet safety if you already don't know this information. Online safety for children, internet safety, things like this, and it will take you to websites that you can, you can get some information on how to keep yourself safe online. It's very important. So we'll get right into this topic here. And this is looking at another web page from Robert Berney, Codependency and Interdependence, and it's called Codependence versus Interdependence. And he sort of gives excerpts from his book, Codependence: The Dance of Wounded Souls, and as we've already read through quite a bit of this stuff onto the web pages that he has. But there's another section, there's a section down here that we haven't really covered, so, you know, we'll just go through this stuff. But we're more than halfway through this particular page. And he says here, Robert Berney says, in order to live, we need to be interdependent. We cannot participate in life giving away some power over our feelings and our welfare. I'm not talking here just about people. If we put money in the bank, we are giving some power over our feelings and welfare to that bank. If we have a car, we have a dependence on it, and we'll have feelings if something happens to it. If we live in society, we have to be interdependent to some extent and give some power away. The key is to be conscious in our choices and own responsibility for the consequences. So, quite interesting what he has to say about that. We are interdependent, I guess, to some extent. That's why we do have to be very careful, what we're going to allow in our lives, you know, who we're going to allow in our lives as adult survivors, especially of survivors of abuse, you know, so that we don't become re-victimized. It's so important. And he says here, the way to healthy interdependence is to be able to see things clearly, to see people, situations, life dynamics, and most of all, ourselves clearly. If we are not working on healing our childhood wounds and changing our childhood programming, then we cannot begin to see ourselves clearly, let alone anything else in life. And so this is really this is sort of what I'm doing. It's what I've been doing for the last 4 years, and just taking a look at my behaviors, why I do what I do, why I believe the way things that I believe, my belief systems, about myself and about the world. To me, the world is a bad place. It's a scary place. I was thinking about that yesterday, actually. I was out running some errands and stuff, and I was sitting there at the bus stop waiting, and I thought, man, this world, my parents set me up in a world to me that was a scary place. It was a unsafe place, and because my home was unsafe. So growing up as a child in this unsafe, scary home presented the world to me, that the world was not a safe place. It was a scary place, and you can't trust people, and you can't trust anything. And so that's how my belief system was all the way through as a child. And just knowing that, you could get hurt at any turn, at any corner, and that was just because I was growing up in this dysfunctional, abusive home where I was getting hurt every time I turned around. And it's, whether it was emotionally, physically, sexually, in every way, psychologically, neglect and whatnot. It's, I thought about that. I thought children can't really help the way that they feel, they're just forced to endure whatever they're being forced to endure as children, and that's the sad part about abuse, is that people don't quite often think about these things, that children are so vulnerable. They really have to put up with whatever is being dished out to them. And unless there's somebody, willing to protect that child in the home, in the family, whether it's one of the parents or one of the grandparents, somebody in the family who's willing to stand up and protect that child's going to suffer, because they're just having to deal with whatever's being dished out to them. And it's absolutely tragic, really. It is, because I think sometimes about what it must have been like for people who grew up in normal families, who grew up in loving homes and stuff. Like, wow, that must be really awesome. It must be a good feeling to not think that the world is this horrible, evil place, and not, even though we know there's problems in the world. I'm just talking about the view of life, because I know there's there's people out there that have totally, have had great childhoods, and had wonderful lives and as children, and I think that's really awesome, because it sets them up so that when they're an adult, they learn how to cope with things, and they learn how to make good decisions, and they still make mistakes like everybody else, but they learn how to roll with it and get up and and not allow it to bring them down, and I think sometimes I think about these things and I'm like, wow, it must be nice, and I appreciate it, and I think that's the way it should be. So it's not necessarily a jealousy thing. It's more like it makes me happy to think that there are people out there, who have had these good childhoods, and were not abused and not mistreated, and that their world isn't a scary place. To them, life is life, and they live it. And to so many survivors, life is hell, and it's scary, and it's painful. You know what I mean? And life, of course, is painful. I mean, you can't get out of that. There's going to be a tragedy. There's going to be things that happen in a person's life, but when you grow up with that foundation, that really solid foundation as a child, growing up in a home where there's lots of love and care, and the family comes together no matter what the odds, no matter what the situation, and pulls together. The parents have the resources to cope and bring up their children properly. Then the world isn't such a scary place, because they learn to trust within themselves that they can make it and they can do it. Whereas so many survivors, don't feel that way because they weren't given those coping skills. So anything comes up and it just throws them down and throws them for a loop, and then it's extremely hard to come back from that again. I have a lot better time now than I did when I was younger, for sure, especially in my 30s, of handling crises and things that are coming up in my life that need to be dealt with and handled, and I don't have the same issues that I had when I was, my 20s and 30s, but I definitely still have some issues. There's certain things that I don't like to face and I'd like to have to deal with, and I think about that, and that's where I'm still working on changing some of my behaviors and some of my belief systems so that I can get help as an adult on this planet, as a person who never learned that as a child, but now is having to learn that stuff as an adult so I can get some help and help myself. You know what I mean? To make sure that I'm accessing all the resources that are available to me to get help when I need it. And that's a hard thing for me to do because my parents didn't do that. They didn't set us up properly for that. So, we've always just tried to make it and manage on our own without any help. And so as an adult survivor, sometimes my decisions are, I have to look at why I'm doing what I'm doing and think about why I make the choices that I do. And so I don't further, further sort of sabotage my life, you know what I mean? Because I've always been sort of self-sabotaging my life because of what my parents had taught me to do, which was to destroy myself, just as they destroyed themselves in their marriage and their family, which was us. And so, you know, basically it just kind of set me on a pattern of destruction and self-destruction. And so, you know, I'm still learning. Like it's taking me a long time to get to get a hold of some of this stuff because I didn't realize what I was doing was even self-sabotage, right? It's just the way I was used to living. So I was just like, oh, well, this is just what I do, or this is how I feel, or whatever. And so I started to take a look at a lot of my behaviors and try to change them around, you know, so that it's a healthy view of life and a healthy view of what's available to me as a present human being on the planet, and that I can reach out for help and I can get help with things, and I don't have to be afraid of everybody. See, that's the problem with adult survivors. Many times, you know, we're afraid to reach out for help because as children, you know, there was no help, right, for many of us. And some people, there was help for people, but for children, you know, so many times growing up abused, there isn't any help for them. I know lots of survivors who there was no help for. And so you learn how to deal with things without the help. So it's really hard to actually ask for help later on because you think, no way, I can, at least I know I can sort of trust myself, but I don't know about those people, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just that survivors of abuse, you know, really don't want to be hurt anymore. They're just tired of it. And I think when you get to be an adult survivor, you know, especially I'm just talking about myself here, you know, in my mid-40s, I don't want to be hurt anymore. I'm really tired of it. You know what I mean? Like I decided, you know, that it was ridiculous that I even stuck around my abusers until I was 29 years old. But I was really just trying to save my mom's life, you know, and which I thought that's what I was doing, which she was basically just using me, which is what I was talking about the other day on here. And, you know, I did care about my mother. I did love my mother very much, and it's very sad that she did not and could not show me that love back, you know. But the thing is that, you know, all of my belief systems were based on their garbage, and I stuck around with those guys, you know, to try to be a positive influence in their lives, you know, until I was about 29, and then, you know, my mother finally just pushed the final button, and I had to leave, you know, so I moved and ran away at the age of 29, which is ridiculous, but it's true. So, you know, I had to really work extremely hard to figure out what I was doing in my life to self-sabotage. Many of my belief systems are based on what my parents taught me. So that's why it's very important for people to realize that, you know, we are going to have to be interdependent, you know, in this life. We are going to have to make these, you know, have these relationships, whether it's working relationships or, you know, patient-doctor relationships, or, you know, even just to have a family doctor is a serious thing for me. I don't want a family doctor. I don't want a doctor, period, you know what I mean? Like, I was not taken to a doctor as a child. My mother spent her whole life pretty much at the doctor's, but, like, we as children were not taken to the doctor because our parents were brought up on charges, abuse charges, and they didn't want to take us to the doctor because they figured that anything that they took us to the doctor for would be slated up against them as maybe possibly being more abuse, which it was. And so, you know, we weren't taken to the doctor, you know, like my hip was out of place since I was a young child, and my back was messed up. I mean, you know, just terrible things that, you know, most parents would not slam their kid's head into a wall, you know, and knock them unconscious and then not worry about whether they should take them to the doctor. But see, abusers, that's what abusers do. They'll hurt their children, and then they, of course, they're going to take them to the doctor. You see all these headlines out here rolling in. This is what we do for, you know, dream catchers for abused children. We're watching this stuff, you know. We're not just hiding behind, you know, oh, you know, I can't look at it. It's too disturbing. I mean, I've looked at this garbage my whole life. I've had to face this pain and this horror my whole life. So I'm not going to turn a blind eye on these kids out here today, you know what I mean, and say, oh, I don't want to look at it. It's too disturbing. But it is disturbing. You better believe it's disturbing. You know, somebody could throw a child across the room and slam their head into walls and hurt them severely, you know what I mean, and then psychologically damage them, you know what I mean, emotionally damaging their children. And society just say, oh, I don't want to look at it. You know, I've had to face this garbage my whole life. And so it's very sad, you know, for these kids out here today, because that's what they need, everybody in on this, so that we can change this mess. But you know, it's just this whole thing of, you know, not being taken to a doctor as a child, you know. And so for me to have to go to the doctor is a huge problem, you know what I mean? Because I don't want nobody touching my body. I don't want anybody looking at me. You know what I mean? It's like that's my wounded inner child speaking there. You know what I mean? She says, don't touch me. You know, I've written a couple of poems about that. You know what I mean? But the thing is I don't want people touching me. I say who touches me. You know what I mean? And it has to be somebody who's very, very much a trustworthy person to me who gets to touch me. There's not very many people that I sit there and say, okay, it's okay for them to touch me. You know what I mean? Because my inner child is saying, I don't want anybody touching me. You know what I mean? Because I was totally not treated right as a child. You know what I mean? I mean, abused in every way, sexually and everything else. And so my inner child just screams out, don't let anyone touch us, So when I think about having to go to the doctor, it's like, oh, good God. And then they're going to ask a bunch of questions. And of course, as an adult, I'm okay with those questions, but my inner child is not. You know what I mean? She doesn't want to answer those questions about the abuse. You know what I mean? It's like this is the whole issue. It's very, very scary for adult survivors. And I don't know. Maybe see, everybody's different. Some people like to go to the doctor. I absolutely hate it, and I don't like people probing and prodding into my into my inner child. I think it's just a protection measure or something. I don't know what it is. But anyway, I have to force myself to go to the doctor. So half the time I don't go, and I, wish that I had gone later, thinking, well, that was stupid. I should have gone. So see, I'm trying to learn how to let people help me, is what I'm trying to do. Because my whole life I was just like, I don't want that help. Get away from me. I'll do it myself, right? And this has been my attitude my whole life. So I've really struggled and stumbled along through life because I've tried to do everything myself without getting any help. And so that's why 4 years ago when I was ready to self-injure, I really wanted to just rip myself to shreds, and I was going to. But I talked myself out of it, and then I was thinking, suicidal thoughts and whatnot, and planning my suicide. And 4 years ago I thought, what am I doing? Like, this is really ridiculous. Like, I need to allow myself to get help. I don't want this abuse to destroy me. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, no, I want to have a good life. I want to have, I've been fighting this whole time, to maintain and to live and to survive. And I thought, I want to do a whole lot more than just survive. I mean, of course, we're all survivors. Like, I want to thrive. I want to have a good life. So I started to really look into it and allow myself to heal. But and then I made myself a promise, and I said, I will get help. If I can't do this self-help, I can't function and I can't cope with this, then I'm going to get help. I'll get professional help. I don't care. But I refuse to let my parents win this fight. So that's the big thing. It's absolutely important for people to realize. We have to make sure that we allow ourselves. So this is this whole interdependence thing. There at some point, we do have to enter into some type of relationships, whether it's working relationships or patient-doctor relationships, like I'm saying, having a family doctor or getting help, being able to go to, take care of things that we need to take care of, and if we can't do it, then we need to get help with it. My parents set us up because they wouldn't get help, and even those social services and the courts were involved. They still didn't want that help because they didn't have any help as children. They were born in the 1920s into these dysfunctional, abusive homes with a bunch of psychotic parents, right? My grandparents, all of them. And, what are you going to do? Their systems, their belief systems were warped, completely warped. And, I've had to, do a quadruple time work to try to see the dysfunction that my parents were put on us so that I can undo it, so to go back and fix it and fix my belief systems and fix this stuff so that I don't sabotage and don't throw away perfectly good relationships with people just because I'm trying to protect my inner child, And that's exactly what people do, that type of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I used to believe, when I was younger that I would hurt somebody before they would hurt me. That was my attitude when I was a teenager. I was like, I will hurt you before you hurt me. And so I became a really tough, cold-hearted jerk. Nobody really wanted to hang around with me. I had a couple of friends, and that could see through it. They knew about the abuse, and they knew me for who I really was. But they saw that outside persona too, and they thought it was great. They actually liked it because it was tough, and they were being abused too. So they kind of, we were all protecting each other. But the thing is that didn't help me out as a young adult. It didn't help me out in my life at all. And I had to do a lot of work to try to change that attitude around. I still have some of that attitude, and I don't want to hurt people, right? I don't want people hurting me, so I have to think very clearly about a lot of things that I do and a lot of decisions that I make, and not do things based on those old, twisted, dysfunctional belief systems. because we have to be a bit interdependent on some people, and we have to be careful who we let into our lives, and we have to know what we're going to allow and what we're not going to allow. I know Robert Burney here has some other stuff here on his web pages about boundary work and whatnot, and boundary work is very important for people who were not shown proper boundaries as children. Abuse is always breaking the boundaries, breaks the boundaries down, and it causes walls to go up that shouldn't be there, tears down boundaries that should be there, and it completely twists people's thinking. Abusive, dysfunctional behavior, as children we have to deal with this stuff, and if we're not shown proper boundary work, by someone or shown how to do it, it's real easy to be re-victimized again, because we don't even think about what we're going to allow in our lives, how we're going to allow someone to treat us, And I decided years ago, really, from a young age, that I was not going to allow anyone to abuse me as an adult, because when I entered into this relationship with this one guy for, my first boyfriend, this was a long time ago, back when I was about 21, 22 years old, and this guy, I trusted him enough to let him into my life, which was kind of bizarre and a miracle, really, but, he was abused as a child, too. Neither one of us worked through any of our stuff, and we were not treating each other right. But I loved him dearly, but I was not going to let him hit me or hurt me, And he didn't want to hurt me. He actually left and he broke the relationship off because he was abused as a child horrifically by his father and ran away at the age of 13, lived on his own in his shack, and he didn't get any help, poor guy. But anyway, he was going to hurt me, physically and every other way, and he had to break it off. He just left. He just completely left. And of course my heart was broken because I was thinking, I love this guy, but see, love is not hurting somebody. Love is not allowing somebody to beat you, to slap you around, punch you in the face, and beat you. That's not love. Right? When somebody loves you, they will not do that to you. If somebody truly loves you, if my parents truly loved me, they would not have done what they did. You know what I mean? There's no room for love in that kind of torture and pain and misery. You know what I mean? When somebody loves somebody, people could say, well, somebody still may love somebody and still hurt them. But to me, I don't see how you could possibly do that. Because to me, love is not about hurting people. It's about helping people. It's about truly being, my sweetheart today loves me. You know what I mean? Like, he's my sweetheart of 16 years here. He's a good man, and he's proven that he loves me. And we've both hurt each other a little bit over the years, but it was kind of normal relationship stuff, and we had to work through a lot of things. And but he would not ever lay a hand on me. He would never pick up something and throw it at me. He would never curse at me. Like, he loves me, so he wouldn't want to hurt me on purpose. We both hurt each other kind of not on purpose, but sort of, this whole relationship dynamic stuff, trying to work to have this mutual life, and we always make it right. And so that's the thing, because we truly love each other, and that's love, right? People will hurt each other, but there's this thing that says, okay, we can make this right. I can change. I don't have to. I can do better. I won't, because this whole thing of hurting somebody and then saying, oh, I love you, I'll never do it again, is just bull crap, But we have to be very careful as adult survivors not to allow that in our lives, because that's what my mother did. My dad, of course, would never apologize for his behavior. He wasn't the typical domestic violence father. He wouldn't come home with flowers and stuff and try to apologize to my mother after he beat her up or raped her or whatever. He would just come home and do it again. So, he wasn't one of these typical abusers. Like, he never did apologize for his behavior. He thought it was perfectly okay what he was doing to my mother. And so I didn't see that growing up. I didn't see this whole cycle of, the makeup, the abuse, and then after that the honeymoon stage and the makeup, and then the abuse again, and then all the, the setup and all of this, right from the cycle of violence, the wheels that you can find on many of the websites out there regarding domestic violence and child abuse. And so, I didn't see that growing up. It was just always abuse, and it was just always abuse, and that's what it was. But the thing is, as an adult, it's real easy to fall for that. You find somebody that you love and you think they love you, and then they hurt you, and then they apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. And then pretty soon, before you know it, they're bringing you flowers and all lovey-dovey for however long they can manage to hold off from slamming you again, and then they're back at it again. And that's that whole cycle, perpetuated cycle of domestic violence and control and abuse. And we have to be very careful as adults that we don't end up in that type of relationship. And also even with friends, we can't allow ourselves to be taken advantage of by people just because we were abused as children. I mean, we have to be very, very careful what kind of friendships and what kind of relationships we enter into. But we need to be, without that, what is life? Like, that's what he was saying. In order to live, we need to be interdependent. We cannot participate in life without giving away some power over our feelings and our welfare. So that's what he's talking about here. He says the way to healthy interdependence is to be able to see things clearly, to see people, situations, life dynamics, and most of all ourselves clearly. So he says if we're not working on healing our childhood wounds and changing our childhood programming, then we cannot begin to see ourselves clearly, let alone anything else in life. And this is just the issue. I mean, this is exactly what it comes down to, is taking a look at ourselves and really getting to know what caused me to be this way. Why do I do the things that I do? Why did my parents do the things that they do? And why did my parents do what they did to me? Many people may not ever get that information because they won't be able to go back. I mean, I spent my, it's not like we were put into foster care and I never saw my parents again and didn't get any background history on the whole thing. I mean, I knew the whole thing, and I was aware of what was going on and why it was happening and why my parents were the way they were. And I had a lot of background information, which is kind of helpful. Some people may not really ever get that information, especially if they were removed from the homes at an early age and put into foster care or adopted by someone, or removed from the home and put into some sort of care facility or whatever. I have a lot of more information than a lot of people would have about their families. So what it did was it actually kind of gave me a little bit of a head start on looking at my behaviors and saying, okay, I don't want to repeat anything that my parents did because they didn't do anything right. So I definitely have to do the opposite of what they did. And that's to be good to myself, treat myself with respect and dignity, and to really, be honest and be aware of my behaviors, that I could possibly hurt somebody, and I need to be very careful that I don't. And so my parents didn't mind hurting each other; they just loved it, and they didn't mind hurting their children. They thought it was great. It was just a thing to do, to beat on and hurt your family and hurt your children and curse them to hell and tell them you're going to kill them at night and stuff. I mean, my parents just thrived on that. They got off on that. It was like, I don't know what their problem was. Well, they were mentally ill, first of all, and also just hateful people. They weren't just mentally ill, only just mentally ill. There's lots of mentally ill people out there who probably are perfectly good parents. My parents were mentally ill and very hateful. They were filled with evil, hateful thoughts about each other and their family, and they hated each other, so that therefore they couldn't love their children. And so I got to sort of see, I definitely don't want to live my life like that. So it gave me a marker, a place to say, okay, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to try to have love in my life, and I'm going to try to learn how to love myself and other people and this life, and I'm going to try to have a good life and learn to look for the better days, to look for the good days. And that's why I'm so insistent upon saying, look for the better days, look for that good stuff, because it's out there. Because my parents set me up to believe that it wasn't out there, and I wanted to kill myself. And at the age of 13, and that's what I tell people all the time, would I have thought that there was ever goodness in this world or goodness in life? I hated myself. I hated life. I absolutely had so much hatred in my heart. By the time I was 13, I was soaked. I was hatred soaked. I was just this little hatred-filled person. That is absolutely horrible to do to a child, and then expect them to be all right. Kick them around some more because they're not. My parents taught me to behave that way, and then beat me for it, and kicked me around for it, threw me out of the house, spit in my face, because they created me. You know what I mean? Then they beat me for it. It was real easy for them to hate me because they taught me to hate, and then it was real easy for them to mistreat me because I was this evil, hateful child. See, and so that's what they did to me. They truly destroyed me. And it was at the age of 13 would I have thought there was any hope? No. Even at the age of 16, no. I was laying in gutters doing drugs and stuff. At the age of 18, same thing, laying in the gutter drinking and doing drugs. This is the thing, right? We have to see that there is better stuff out there. We don't have to allow this abuse to destroy us. So we have about a minute left. Thanks, everybody, for being here. But I'm telling you, you make sure you get some help. And you don't struggle on your own. And if you're having a hard time, you make the phone call, even to an anonymous phone call, a crisis line, whatever you have to do. But you make sure that you stick around. You certainly deserve so much better. I know that I did. I did not deserve to be treated that way, and I deserve to get every bit of help that I can possibly get. And I deserve to have a good life, and I don't think my story is any more special than anybody else's. I'm just one more survivor out here, and none of us deserve to be treated this way ever. And so you make sure you stick around and don't allow the abuse to destroy you, and get some help where you can. And find those better days, right? And stick around for them. So have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you again. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, same time, same place, and I'll be thinking about everybody. I know I have almost 30,000 shows to listen to, so somebody's listening to my shows, and a lot of my good friends are actually Gypsy Witch and Chris, and a lot of good people. Thank you so much for being here with me. You're my friends, you're my family, and I appreciate it. And everybody else, I appreciate you tuning in. I don't know who you all are who are listening, but I want to thank you for taking the time to be part of my life and to be a part of my healing journey, because really that's what it is. So thank you so much for your support and for tuning in and for sharing the show. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.